everyone. Can you hear me?
I can.
Perfect. Thank you. And so good morning to everyone. I'm Francesco Bonamici from the University of Florence, and I will be the chair of this session. I'm very glad to be chairing this session of the Florence ERITech Conference, which is entitled Innovative Virtual Methods and Tools for Diagnostics and Monitoring. And we have some great papers that I'm eager to hear, and I hope that there will be many questions from the audience. So I'm asking all of you to please write your question in chat or directly ask at the end of the talk to the speaker. And from the organization point of view, we have more or less 20 minutes that we can spend on each paper. So I'd ask the speaker to keep their presentation under 15 minutes, so to keep a little bit of time for some questions. And if there are no questions from the audience, I think that we can start with the first speaker, which is Francesco Bianconi from the University of Perugia. Francesco, are you in chat?
I am.
Okay.
Good morning.
So Francesco will present his paper, Experimental Analysis of Color Constancy and Color Augmentation for Painting Classification by Artistic Genre, Preliminary Results. You have the floor.
All right. I hope you can see my slides.
Yeah.
Could you confirm that? All right.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. In this work, I'm going to present some preliminary results about the effect of color constancy and color augmentation for painting classification by artistic genre. Okay. This is the outline of the talk. I'll give some background at the beginning, then I'll present the materials and methods used in the experiments. In particular, I'll describe the color constancy and color augmentation methods and the image descriptors used for the experimental evaluation. I'll present the experimental setup and conclude with some discussion about the results and ideas for future work. Well, right. In recent years, automated classification of paintings either by author or art genre has attracted a lot of research interest, and there are many potential applications. For instance, in the management of large data sets of paintings, when we want to infer data about unknown paintings, or when we want, for instance, to retrieve paintings related to a given one. And there are also some interesting applications in forensics, for instance, detection of fraud and or illegal copies. In the process of automated painting recognition, of course, color plays a major role. There is, however, a problem with color. That color varies considerably as the imaging conditions change. If we change the illumination, if we change the camera, the result will be significantly different. And so the question is, do these differences have an effect on automated recognition procedures? And can we compensate for these differences using some color pre-processing algorithms, such as, for instance, color constancy and color augmentation? So this was the main question that we investigated in this work. So the objective was to investigate the effects of color constancy and color augmentation on the automated classification of paintings by art style. Well, for this work, we used one data set of paintings, Pandora 7K, This data set includes around 8,000 images, subdivided into 12 classes or art genres, art movements, and it comes with predefined subdivisions into train and test sets for evaluating classification methods. So in this slide and in the following one, we can see the 12 classes of art genres included in this data set. The number of images for each class is variable. Okay, now let's talk about the methods. Let's go a bit more into detail about color constancy and color augmentation. Let's talk about color constancy first. What's the objective of color constancy? The objective is that of obtaining a representation of a scene independent of the imaging condition. So in color constancy, we have one input image and one output image, which is usually referred to as the color normalized image. We consider 4 methods for color constancy in this work. Very easy ones, as we'll see: chromaticity representation, gray word normalization, max white normalization, and histogram stretch. Let's have a look at them a bit more in details. And chromaticity representation is just a normalization of the intensity of each color channel. So it's a L1 normalization of the color triplet. We divide each color by the sum of the 3 colors. The basic assumption of this work, of course, is that we work with RGB images and in the RGB color space. This is an example. On the left, we have the original image, and on the right, we have the transformed one. So the result of chromaticity representation is usually an image which looks a bit dull in color. The second method that we considered for color constancy was gray word normalization. Well, in this case, the basic assumption is that the average color in the scene, the average color of the image, is gray. And based on this assumption, we apply again, we use one of the 3 channels as the pivot, and we apply a suitable gain to the other 2 in order to make it that the average color of the image is gray. So here we can see an example on the same image and the transformed one. The third method for color constancy was max white normalization. In this case, the idea is that we scale the R, G, and B values of each pixel in a way that the brightest pixel saturates the capacity of the 3 channels. So the brightest pixels, if we have a 8-bit image, we will have intensity 255 for each channel. And here again we can see the result. And finally, the last method that we considered for color constancy was histogram stretch, which consists of a channel-wise left shift followed by max white normalization. So this is about color constancy. Then we consider color augmentation, which has attracted a lot of research interest in recent years. The objective of color augmentation is that of given an input image to create a set of images that are, say, color compatible with the original one. So that can be obtained from the original one through some suitable transformation of the color distribution. So differently from color constancy, where we have one output image for one input image, in color augmentation in general, we can have more than an output image for every input image. So it's a one-to-many relationship in this case. The method we use in this paper is a variation of the one proposed by Krzyzewski and colleagues in 2012, and consists of a translation of the color space along the principal axis of the color distribution. I'll show it in the following slides. So it works as follows. We have our input image, and first we compute the color distribution in the RGB space. This color distribution can actually be regarded as a mass distribution, of which we can compute the axis of the inertia, the principal axis, and the corresponding radial of gyration. And when we have the principal axis, we can apply a translation of the distribution along one or more of such principal axis. So in formulas, we will have this transformation where the new RGB coordinates are obtained from the original ones, plus a translation of a certain amount along one or more of the principal axis. So it is important to keep in mind in this formula that alpha, beta, and gamma represent the multiplying factor determining the entity of the displacement along each of the principal axes. And here we can see some examples. This is the original image. In the first example, we have a color transform image in which we shifted the color distribution along the first principal axis by an amount of 30%. In the second one, the shift was applied along the second and third principal axis, and the amount was minus 20% and minus 30%. And in the third one, a different shift was applied along the three principal axes, and we can see how the color distribution and the color appearance of the image changes. In the experiment, we consider 5 different configurations for color augmentation, A, B, C, D, and E. In each case, these are the perturbation values that we applied to the color distribution. So in the case of A, we obtain two output images for each input image. In configuration B, we got 3 output images for each input images, and so on. Let's now have a look at the the image descriptors we use for this work. We consider 3 different classes of image descriptors: color descriptors, texture descriptors, and convolutional neural networks. Let's start with the color descriptors. We consider very classic one and also very simple ones. The mean of each color channel, the mean and standard deviation of each color channel, the percentiles of each color channel, the 3-dimensional full histogram, and the marginal histograms along each color channel. Then we took into account 5 texture descriptors. So in texture descriptors, actually, color is discarded and they are computed on the luminance channel. And in this case, discrete cosine transform, Gabor filters, loss mask, local binary patterns, and Zernike moments. And finally, we consider 5 pre-trained convolutional neural networks as feature extractors. The features were in particular the output of the layer indicated here. So we consider DenseNet 121, and the output layer was the average pool. MobileNet layer was dropout. ResNet 50, again it was average pool. VGG16 and FC2 was the layer from which we extracted the features, and finally exception, and it was again average pool. all the features were L1 normalized before passing them to the classifier. Let's have a look at the experimental setup. We tested for accuracy each combination, color constancy or color augmentation, plus each of the image descriptors that I described. We use a very simple and non-parametric classifier, which was the L1 class, the nearest neighbor classifier with L1 distance. For the validation, we use the original fold that come with Pandora dataset. Accuracy was the number of paintings correctly classified among the paintings of each of the test folds. We applied color constancy and color augmentation both to the train and the test images. Let's have a look at the results. Let's start with the color constancy. Here the image descriptors are divided in the three groups. The first one are the color one, color descriptors, texture descriptors, and convolutional networks. Sorry about that. So we can see that in 5 cases out of 15, chromaticity representation produced the best results, followed by doing nothing, no color augmentation or color constancy, which was the best option in 4 cases. In particular, we can see that chromaticity representation was good with texture descriptors. Another thing that we have to notice is that in general, and this is in agreement with more recent results, convolutional networks worked much better than the traditional methods. We obtained a higher result with the pre-trained ResNet 15. Regarding color augmentation, in this case, it seems that the effect of it was even worse, was not particularly beneficial. In fact, we obtained that in 8 cases out of 15, doing nothing, I mean, applying no color preprocessing altogether, was the best option. And in the other cases, in some cases, there was some increase, some gain, but very, very slight. So, in conclusion, well, in practice, the main result is actually that neither color constancy nor color augmentation are particularly beneficial when it comes to automated classification of paintings by Art Journal. And specifically, we said that about color constancy, chromaticity representation was the best option in 5 cases, followed by doing nothing. But the gain, even when color constancy produced some gain, was in any case very, very limited, below 2 percentage points. Regarding color augmentation, this actually worked even worse. In fact, doing nothing was the best option in 8 cases out of 15. And in the other cases where it worked, we had very little gain, in this case, less than 1 percentage point or no gain at all. Regarding the image descriptors, pre-trained networks work better than the hand-assigned methods. And among them, ResNet 50 emerged as the best one. So in conclusion, I mean, from these preliminary results, the main conclusion is that neither color constancy or color augmentation show a clear advantage compared with doing nothing. Although color constancy was beneficial in some cases, particularly with some texture descriptors, color augmentation provided very, very little or no benefit at all, and pre-trained networks generally outperformed color and texture descriptors. Well, there are, of course, some limitations in this work. These are, in fact, preliminary results. So we used only one data set, which is a limitation. So the results will need to be validated in larger studies involving more data sets. And we also plan to develop and evaluate other methods for color pre-processing, for instance, color transfer, which was not considered in this study. And so this is all. And thank you very much for your attention. And let me know if there are any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. And are there any questions for Francesco Bianconi?
I have one. Can I ask you, why do you think the color augmentation or color normalization should help to classification of those images? Why you choose this way? How to improve the data set before other possible ways? Thank you.
Right. I don't know what other possible ways could be, and we thought that actually color constancy and color augmentation could be two reasonable approaches to improve classification, but actually it seems that they're not. I mentioned there could be other methods, such as, for instance, color transfer, which we don't consider in this work. That could be something we could explore. There could also be, for instance, other methods, such as, for instance, color calibration. But that implies that you need to have access to the scene. Of course, if you can image the painting yourself, you could carry out color calibration, and I think that should work very well. But in most cases, you just have the data set and you have no chance to do some kind of color calibration. So you have left only some color pre-processing procedures for trying to correct on different illumination conditions or any other noise factors.
Okay. And thank you again, Francesco, for your presentation. I think that we can move on to the next speaker, who is Yutsu Wang from the University of Leicester. And she will present the paper, The Development of Popular Music Heritage, Exploring an AR Exhibition. Francesco, you should remove your screen.
Yeah, you're right. I'm trying to do that. Okay. Should be fine now.
Okay.
Okay. Could you hear
You should
me?
be able to, yes, you should be able to share your screen.
Yes. Okay. I'm Yutsu, and I'm very delighted to share my research in this conference to talk about the development of popular music heritage, exploring an AR exhibition. And this research was done when I was a postgraduate in the School of Music Study and the University of Leicester in the UK. And here is the outline of my presentation. And I will start a brief introduction to talk about the topic and then setting the scenes and then the method I use. And then we'll spend much time on the case study, which is the core of this research, and discuss it and then have the conclusion. Okay, let's start. Musical heritage has been recognized as an important cultural treasure, and popular music as one of the music genres since it has an impact on people's lives. and shapes generation, cultural memory, identity, and history. In the museum field, popular music is regarded as heritage, and more museums take it seriously to preserve pop music with exhibitions. Besides, digital technology offers opportunities for museums to fulfill their goals and maintain different types of heritage, including pop music in new ways to create further development of preservation. And the digital technology here, we focus on the AR, which has been used in museums to overcome museum fatigue and prolong visitors' experiences with multiple media contents. Therefore, in order to explore the relationship between digital technologies and museum preservation of pop music heritage, this research focused on the AR exhibition David Bowie Is to discuss 3 topics such as the interpretation of pop music, the authenticity of experiences, and the museum functions. So the first one I want to talk about is the interpretation of popular music. There are different opinions about how to interpret pop music in museums. Firstly, scholar Reynolds argues that music is intangible, so that it can't be displayed in a museum or it will lose its value. However, other scholars such as Baker have the opposite idea that it's not easy to understand the story of music without tangible objects. Also, Dr. Leonard believes that the interpretation of music can only focus on its essence, but its influence on social developments and people's daily lives. Besides, museums have been looking for proper methods to exhibit sound and maintain a museum environment for people to see audio exhibits. However, when exhibiting music, there will be the problem sound bleeding if pieces of music are played side by side. Therefore, handphones or individual rooms are installed in the rooms to avoid sound bleeding. But this way isolate the audience and weaken the social aspects of pop music that is for everyone to feel and share. So museums have to set their purposes and then choose appropriate mediums to display different aspects of pop music and influence on people's daily life. And next, the thing is to talk about the authenticity from real museum to the digital world. Museum traditional notion of authenticity focus on objects' originality and artworks claimed by artists. However, for pop music, reproduction is essential since it allows pop music to be spread widely, preserved, and listened to by people repeatedly. Therefore, what is authenticity here needs to be revised. On the other hand, museums often use replicas or models to convey their message for different reasons. Even if these representations are copies of the originals, when the audience interacts with them, their experiences are authentic. Therefore, as Professor Perry states that authenticity in museums is not only about the object itself, but also about the visitor's experiences. It is an authentic experience where people can get a feeling and share story with the people accompanied to exhibitions. Therefore, creating an authentic experience for the audience is in pop music exhibition is a trait to preserve music heritage. And in terms of digital content, digital museums and virtual exhibitions are more than reproduction and can contextualize objects through narratives and links. Real objects have their values, but their digital versions can deliver supplementary explanations which are valued by visitors. Such virtual content acts as a catalyst for authentic experiences since it can preserve fragile artifacts. It can also support learning and create entertainment in heritage tourism. Therefore, when the audience interact with the exhibition virtual contents together, they live new experiences. And the method here in this research we use is a case study, the AR exhibition David Bowie Is. And in order to analyze this exhibition, we deploy the discourse analyze to understand how the knowledge and content of the AR exhibition are constructed in textual, visual, and spatial languages. And so this method is suitable to know the exhibition's objectiveness and narratives. And here is the case study, the AR exhibition David Bowie Is. It was a commodity application launched on January 2019. And it was produced by the David Bowie Archive, Sony Music Entertainment Incorporation, and Planetary Studio. This exhibition is an adaptation of the same-name exhibition held at the V&M Museum in 2013. It combines the AR advantage and mobile technology, and it supports the interpretation of the intangible nature of music and material collection by creating new experience for the audience. So before exploring this AR exhibition, we need to know its original. The original David Bowie exhibition made its debut at the V&M Museum in London in March 2016, and created by Victoria Bross and Geoffrey Marsh, the two curators. And later it toured around the world for 5 years. This exhibition aimed to provide a different holistic account of British singer David Bowie, aiming to inspire the audience's imagination and creativity. It displayed nearly 400 objects, including his drawing, lyrics, cartoon, photographs, videos, and objects. This exhibition contains the cultural and social context of the music through collection videos, interpreting Bowie's life and contribution to pop music and pop culture. So based on this original exhibition, the AR exhibition's main themes and contents that represent the two V&M Museum curators' ideas, and Planetary Studio adapting the physical collection into digital content. Therefore, this digital exhibition presents different narratives and creates new interactive experience for the audience. And so how to use the app to visit the AR exhibition? We just need mobile devices and handphones. So in the first picture on the left side shows the interface, and there are 4 basic function settings: recalibrate, map, and the next step, going to the next thing. And the next photo shows that there are 25 rooms, and totally composite the whole exhibition. And the next picture, we can see there is only topic title, subtitles, so we can know the AR exhibition have less texture. And the next one is we can see is the platform. There are many digital exhibits, so what we need to do is just click what we want to see, and it will show its detail to us. We can also zoom in and zoom out any objects to look at its details. So now we have the basic idea of this AR exhibition. Let's move on to the discussion. The first discussion is the interpretation of popular music objects. This AR exhibition can be inspirational for popular music heritage because of combination of the multimedia creative and immersive experience. And also its variety of visual attractiveness prolong the audience's attention to the exhibition and help them to overcome museum fatigue. Unlike real visit situations where the audience has to see the whole exhibition in one go, the AR exhibition that its audience has control over time to view exhibits and how many times to access the exhibition without limitations of time and space. The exhibition presents the development of Bowie's music from folk rock, glam rock, electronic music, and jazz, showing Bowie's influence on the music world. The exhibition as a digital platform can preserve the real exhibition and extend it according to Bowie's particular. For example, the 2 pictures above present the theme Space Oddity, which is designed for the iconic song. It describes Major Tom, an astronaut ready to return home from the moon and the outer space. So we can see the picture, the background is the outer space, and in the middle is the Earth. These visuals change users' perspective to Major Tom's viewpoints, allowing them to connect the song to the moon landing, a significant event and less time. And this exhibition also delivers an idea that David Bowie showed us that we could be who we wanted to be. For example, the photo on the left lower side shows the theme Ziggy Stardust, telling Bowie's signature character and how Ziggy Stardust developed his rise and fall in glam rock. His avant-garde, quirky, non-binary makeup and costume challenged the conventional norms and opened a door for his fans and the public to face gender and identity differences. So therefore, this AR exhibition shows not only the material collections, but the impacts of Bowie on the social and cultural development at his time. And the next discussion is about authenticity of experiences. The authenticity here will be discussed in terms of virtual content and musical experience. The AR collection are digital representation of the original object carrying augmented information to user. It provides, for example, an opportunity to read the lyric manuscripts while listening to the music and get an understanding of the cultural and social developments of the time. And also the AR exhibition creates an authentic experience for the audience. The music displayed in the AR exhibition has similar functions in museum in terms of arousing the audience emotions and triggering their personal memories. They can resonate their collective memories of Bowie's time and then generate new experiences and memories through the AR interactions. Visitors of the virtual exhibition can encounter authentic experiences through, for example, the live theme here, which is a room to show Bowie's famous live performances. With a screen and immersive sound, the audience can get an authentic experience to feel what happened at the event and spark all new emotions. Next is to discuss the museum functions. So this AR exhibition responds to the V&A Museum mission and values about accessibility, digital development, and preservation. The AR exhibition contributes to the museum's educational role, applying digital technology to create interactive experiences. It also enables everyone to use it from all over the world anytime, just have the mobile devices. This breaks the limitation of the physical museum's opening times and locations. Besides, it can extend the exhibition provision with augmented information on private or fragile collections, which have not been displayed in public before. This app also can help research on the development of popular music in the 20th century with valuable references from the V&A Museum and the David Bowie Archive. And the final discussion is about possibility of popular music heritage. It is necessary to discuss the commercial aspect of this exhibition, since this exhibition is a product. If museums have a similar app to sell, it's like tickets of the exhibition. And this exhibition is more like a souvenir or supplement of the original exhibition because it doesn't replace the original one, but instead it expands the audience experiences. Besides, this AR exhibition could open a new communication means for the popular music industry. The development of the music industry has been changed with different media from physical recording to digital downloads. Moreover, the streaming services such as Spotify or iTunes make a breakthrough in this industry. And users can listen to songs in the database for as long as they have the streaming services. And this shift changed the way of people's habit of listening to music and the music marketing. So this AR application can be seen as a commodity as people buy the productions of pop music such as albums or cassettes. And so this exhibition has developed different and more informative experiences of listening to music. And people can know more about Bowie when listening to his music, when exploring this exhibition. Therefore, this exhibition offers new methods to preserve and distribute popular music heritage to the public. And to sum up the AR exhibition, David Bowie can be an inspiration for the preservation of popular music and pop cultural heritage. It also preserves pop music to the next generations and innovates the current trend of listening to music. It also offers multiple interpretations by combining the real and virtual world and embracing visitors' emotions and memories. It provides multiple narratives to tell David Bowie's untold stories and experiments on music, stage, costume, that question gender and social norms at his time. And the interaction in this exhibition creates authentic experiences for the audience, even if they interact with not real but existing objects in the virtual world. The digital SB are authentic in their way to refer the originality and offer accurate information to present their values. This exhibition also can help to promote the museum functions due to access without boundaries, digital preservation, and enhancing the museum educational and research role. So for future study to fill the gap of this research, visitor studies and evaluation are important to be conducted to make a comprehensive understanding of the AI exhibition and the variety possibility for the popular music exhibition. So hope popular music heritage can be well preserved and be loved by future generations. And this is all about the research, and hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, the really entertaining case study that you presented. And are there any questions for the speakers?
Yes.
Okay, if there are no questions, I think that we can move on to our next presentation from Ernesto Iadanza of the University of Ferrara, Bridging the Gap Between 3D Navigation and Semantic Search, the Inception Platform.
Yes, thank you, Francesco. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. So I'll try to share my screen. Okay, I hope it works.
Okay, perfect, yes.
So thank you. Yes, what I'm describing today is the Inception project. The project was completed in May last year. And after this project, we founded a spin-off company, a startup company, which is a spin-off of the University of Ferrara. So briefly, the project Inception, I think some of you might be familiar with it. We've been presenting it in previous editions of Florence Heritech, is the inclusive and cultural heritage in Europe through 3D semantic modeling. So the basic idea of the project, which involved 14 partners from 10 European countries and 7 research partners and 7 small medium enterprises, was to have in these 5 actions this overall concept. So starting from a common framework for defining a method and methodology for cataloging, we moved to action 2, which is integrated data capturing, and then action 3, the semantic modeling for cultural heritage buildings, which is maybe the core of the project. So the whole project is how to use semantics and cultural heritage to obtain what we developed in action 4. And I was in charge of designing and realizing the Inception platform. And after that, the action 5, of course, was the deployment and the valorization. So from data capturing to beam modeling to H-beam enrichment. So we start with the capturing, and then we use beam, very well-known building information modeling technologies, and then we used and we designed and then used an H-beam ontology for enriching these 3D models. So the platform has a layered architecture, which is quite common, of course, in this kind of technologies. So starting from the data acquisition layer, you can move to the data integration layer, the data information layer, where all the information stays, and also where the semantic ontologies I was mentioning is resident, and of course the files repositories. And then you have an interoperability layer, and then high-level services, and finally the application layer on top of it. Some of the applications we have developed them. Some could be developed by third parties because we provided the third parties with some APIs, application programming interfaces. So the platform and the services are open to new implementations. Talking about services, we have elaborated some cloud services for, particularly in this example, you can see IFC to Bean, Bean to JS, IFC to TTL. What is it? Well, we are starting with an IFC file, which is a standard for building information modeling, and we are converting it in order to have it accessible completely via web. So our platform is totally web-based, HTML5, and many more technologies I will try and mention later. So what we are doing is converting everything into semantics, and then using web to obtain a 3D model once again. Okay, and for doing that, we also have no database, no traditional, at least, databases, no relational databases, no MySQL, SQL services, or SQL Server, or this kind of databases, Oracle, and so forth. But we only have a triple store, because we don't have data, we have triples of data. This is the basics of semantic web. I have a couple of slides later for those of you who are less familiar with this kind of technology. And as I said, we developed a bunch of APIs. So the whole Inception platform is based on fully documented RESTful application program interfaces, which was a precondition for the project. We wanted it to be interoperable, and what best way in web than using RESTful APIs. Very quickly, this is how the platform can be represented as a workflow, if you like. So starting with survey data, and then you have BIM model, but also semantic data. You can fuse them together through those services I was mentioning before, and you have some technologies, of course, for doing that. And you arrive to the core of the Inception platform. And also we have some particular features like scopes, like the time machine. So different scopes for different purposes. No? If you have a model which is for scholars to study a specific piece of art, it's very different from modeling something for a game designer, for example, no? Because the quality, the visual quality you need in one case is very different from the technical quality you need in the other case. And we have also protocols for exchanging data with other platforms. We have a few examples, for example, with Europeana. I think it's a very well-known project. We showed in a case study how we can interact successfully with that using our protocols and APIs. And these are the data output. Okay, so I think I can skip these because I've been talking about that. Of course, if you have any questions, you can write me an email later or at the end of the presentation. I'm here to answer you. And also the time machine is quite interesting. So you can have different phases in the BIM model itself. So you have only one model using, for example, the Revit phasing. You can describe how that, you can describe how that building was a few centuries ago, and how the development created and demolished new parts of the building. And this can be represented in quite an enjoyable way through the time machine function. I said very quickly what semantic web is. Well, the linked Open Data Cloud I represented here is a typical representation of what semantic web is. So starting from a web of document, we have now moved to a web of, let's say, nuclear informations connected together. No? So a web of data, if you like. In this example, we have a technical report with its URI, Uniform Resource Identifier. And we have some properties like has title, has publisher, has author. Could be, of course, one-to-many, like in this case. And this is has report type, and you have survey. So this is a way to describe an object semantically, and also in not just as an ontological entity, but also in terms of relationship between different entities. This is all what our ontology is trying to do in cultural heritage. So in this case, for example, you have a different entity, which is a wall with its metadata or properties, if you prefer, like being an external wall, having some kind of material and codes and so forth. But it is also linked to the technical report that I showed you in the previous slide. So we're talking about, as I said, a web of data instead of a web of documents. There's plenty of information on that if you prefer. You can start with the World Wide Web Consortium, of course, which is the entity that defines the standard protocols and languages like JSON-LD, like Sparkle for querying, and so forth. So this is how we can represent the Inception HBeam ontology in terms of semantic web. So nodes and relations between nodes. Let's try and see a few videos of, let me just, okay. A few videos of the platform itself. So in this example, you can see we have different heritage buildings, or it could be museums or other types of buildings. And for each of them, for each site, you can see you have different scopes. I was mentioning you technical documentation or general, or maybe a ludic or whatever you prefer. And for each of them, you will have your BEAM model fully navigable through a web browser, as in this example. In this view, you have the typical BEAM view. So you have your elements, you can select them, you can try and make them visible or not, and you can have this sort of, if it was CAD, I would say layers, no, on and off. In this case, are classes, and you can select or deselect one or many of them in order to do your operations. But you also might be interested in seeing the textures. Like in this case, you have the same model, but in this case, you are looking at the textures. Well, for the textures, you don't have the same information you have in BEAM, but luckily we designed this very innovative way to show things. So you have the two models. One is textured, the other one is BEAM, so it's full of metadata and documentation and information on materials and so forth. You can overlap them, and this is quite nice and interesting. So you're navigating the textured single mesh, but again, you are accessing the BEAM components. And if you click on metadata, this is maybe more clear. So you have the IFC type, you have the name of the element, you have its global ID, and also all the metadata, because let's not forget, this is all based on the ontology I tried to very briefly describe previously. So most of these properties come directly from Revit or ArchiCAD or whatever you used for modeling your 3D model, your building, and you might have a lot of properties and metadata. Let me try and quickly skip to the next video. Of course, you can also query. We have a semantic search engine, which is very useful because it can not just search for buildings or single elements, but also search into metadata, also search into attachments like a file which is attached to a specific element inside the building. So having the power of semantic web enables you also very interesting queries like the one I'm doing now. Is just selecting an element. You can see in red on the left all the attachments which might be photos or videos or PDF or more 3D models, if you like. In this case, the model is I think you recognize it, is from Florence, and is the Museo degli Innocenti. And in this case, what we are doing is trying to select one single specific tondo, and you will see in the metadata that you will have this specific inception nomenclature. What is inception nomenclature? Is a way to enrich the standard property set that comes from Revit or ArchiCAD or whatever you're using, and using the inception HBeam, you can enrich your pieces like this tondo in this case with the author, with a hyperlink to the Getty vocabulary of that, or maybe if you want with attachments, there might be in this case a photo, a picture of the that specific tondo. And here you're leveraging semantic web to go in this case to the Getty vocabulary to understand what this specific tondo is all about. Let me also try, because I see that time is running fast. So these are some pictures, some attachments that you can link to the specific element in your 3D model. Again, you can collaborate on the model. So what we did is something similar to what we are very used to do today with social networks. So you have a post and you have a reply. You can reply to that post, and somebody else will reply to your reply. So you are doing a conversation. Well, in this case, you're doing the same exact thing, but on a very specific element. So what, well, here what I'm showing is that you can modify your 3D model via web. So you don't need to go back to Revit to change some metadata or to add some keywords, for example. But as I mentioned, let me just go very quickly to the conversation, because these videos are way too long for today's presentation. So once you log in to the platform, you will be able to do what I was mentioning. So please check the validity of this information. You can write it in your comment, and somebody else will log to the platform and maybe will see your comment and will try to reply to your comment. So very simply, as you do with Twitter or whatever social network you use. Okay, thanks. This is very interesting because you are using your model or your single elements as the entry point for a conversation that might be also a discussion between scholars all over the world. And the time machine function, again, I will quickly go here to the phases. Now you can see phase 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're leveraging the phasing tools that you have in Revit. It is a bit different with ArchiCAD, but we also have the same system that is able to extract phases both from Revit and from ArchiCAD. So once you are, oh, let me just stop the video for a second. Once you arrive here, you can click on Time Machine and you will see, in this case, 5 different phases. So you can move back to your period. It could be phase 1, for example, which is 1419 to 1436. And this is how the Istituto degli Innocenti appeared. It was quite different from how it is today. And you can follow the evolution of the building, 1931 to 2015 and so forth. So you have a single beam model, but you have different time phases in it. And you can enrich your model with different collections, like in this case, it's this Europeana I was mentioning before. So very nice database of photos, documents, and pictures that you can link using the same exact technology and ontologies that I was showing you before. You can link it to your building or maybe to a specific element in your building. Could be a column, could be a door, or whatever you prefer, you like. And to close, of course, you can use virtual reality and augmented reality, starting from the model that I showed you. So going back to the time machine, you can use your time machine to develop AR applications. Like in this case, we are moving in time from 1487 to 1843 to 1898, and you can see how the building changed, and you can very easily interact and extract information live. So if you are a developer of VR or AR applications, you can use live the APIs from Inception and try to enrich your applications. And finally, to close, as I said, after the closing of the project, we founded a startup company, which is also a spin-off of the University of Ferrara. And what we are doing is exploiting the Inception core engine for not just for cultural heritage, but for different purposes like tourism, like property management, estate management, and so forth. And I hope I was more or less in time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ernesto, and a really beautiful presentation from your part. We have time maybe for a quick question, if there is a question from the audience. If not, since we are running out of time, we can move on to our next speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you again. And our next speaker is Jan Blazek from the Czech Academy of Sciences. And he will present the paper Subpixel Precision in Registration of Multimodal Datasets.
So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jan Blazek, and I would like to share with you the results of our research. First of all, it's necessary to mention that our contribution goes from the IT field, and there is only gentle touch of restoration and conservation practice. Nevertheless, as you can see, I will talk about digital image processing, which is very suitable for visible and infrared image comparison and fits in the class of non-invasive artwork studies. In our previous research, we proposed a method able to extract hidden information from near-infrared reflectograms. As you know, and probably exploit, near-infrared images are able to uncover underdrawings, but as you can see in the first image in the left corner, sometimes this information is not clearly readable from the near-infrared because near-infrared reflectograms contain too much of the information from the painting surface layers. So we proposed an algorithm for subtraction of those surface layers from the near-infrared, which is here demonstrated by 3 images at the bottom of this slide. As you can see, split of the near-infrared reflectogram from the right top corner into 2 parts, one which corresponds with surface layers, and the second, where is the residua, is much more suitable for underdrawing readability. The obstacle here is that this method presented several years ago works just for data sets which are registered. Well, here it will be good to explain what the term registration means, because it is widely used just in the community of digital image processing. what happens when you take your camera adapted for near-infrared acquisition and takes 2 images. One will be in visible and one in the near-infrared. When you open these 2 images in the Photoshop and create a layer from each of them, you will see that the position of pixels do not correspond. So you have to find out a transformation which fixes this. It is very time-consuming and often frustrating, and for other modalities, for example, X-ray, it is often impossible. And more than that, our great algorithm from underdrawing highlighting is useless because our computation fails. And what happened in case of common camera? In this case, we use our Canon D500. You see on this slide, and if you take a look at the bottom line, your visible here, the square, the visible and near infrared pixels are shifted for more than 6 pixels to the bottom, but on the right side, the second square, they are shifted to the right. So we have here a spherical transformation which should be fixed before we start to compare something, and this process is called registration. We call it multimodal registration because you use different modalities like visible or near infrared, and registration, which denotes the process of searching the transformation. The workflow. Maybe you have heard about machine learning and you know what are the artificial neural networks, and this is our tool here. Our first stage to solve multimodal registration is to be able to find out transformations which are rigid. Rigid means that there are no perspective deformations, no barrel and Pincushion distortions, just shift, rotation, and scale. Perspective and spherical distortion we would like to solve in the second stage. The gray part of the schema on this slide represents our prior algorithm for underdrawing highlighting. It takes pixel intensities from the input image and transform this pixel intensity from the visible to intensity in near infrared. But if this pixel position mismatch, the conversion won't work. So we first need to find corresponding pixels. Except the gray part, there is a black one. Several layers of neural network which do this registration stuff for us. Let's say we have pixel at the position 1010 in the visible reflectogram, which corresponds with the pixel at the position 1515 in the near infrared reflectogram. So we put near infrared pixel 1515 into the input layer of our neural network here and apply on them shift, rotation, and scale. If the neurons are properly trained, we obtain coordinates 1010, the coordinates of the pixel in the visible reflectogram. And then we just follow our prior algorithm. The training has 5 steps in which we alternate which part of the network is trained. First of all, we train the gray part, the conversion between near infrared and visible. Near infrared input you have on the left, visible on the right, and the product of the artificial neural network in the middle. And as you can see, in the first step, the network learns how to work with pixel intensities at all. The training starts with no such ability, and during 200 epochs, is the network able to copy somehow the intensity from the input to the output. In the second stage, we do the rough registration. It's all about just 30 epochs, and the network do the basic alignment. In the third stage, we continue with adaptation of intensity conversion. And as you can see, the output of the neural network is not just a copy of input values, but there is visible adaptation to the intensities of visible pixels. Fourth stage is about rotation and scale. And finally, in the fifth stage, we enable training of all layers together and do some polishing of the results. This way, we are able to estimate the transformation parameters and as well find out a function which is able to convert, in this case, near-infrared reflectogram to visible. We also check limitations of this method, and there are some. So we have made about 100,000 of runs of our method to verify its performance and to find out their limits. So we took images which was generated in Instituto Nazionale di Ottica in Florence, which was precisely registered thanks to scanner construction, and we apply on these images our target transformation which we would like to estimate. As an input modality, we have chosen the narrow band, about 50 nanometers, centered in 700 nanometers wavelength. And we try to adapt it to target modality, which goes from 400 to 2250 nanometers. And what we measure is in this experiment was misplacement of the registration. In the graph, the misplacement error is on y-axis and the target modality on the x-axis. And as you can see, our method works well for modalities from 620 nanometers. This means just 80 nanometers far from input modalities in visible range, and up to 1000 nanometers. This means 350 nanometers far from input modalities for near infrared. This is cues that the correlation of near infrared bands is much higher than for visible wavelengths. We also measure the precision of each layer. So here you can see we run our experiment on 43 samples, different images. And for each of these images, we select different transformation and repeated the experiment 20 times with different random seed, and measure misplacement in pixels for each layer. So here is the shift layer, and you can see that there are samples where we was successful. The precision is good. It's less than pixel, a lot less. And there are also samples from 26 to 34 where we were not so much successful. And there is also one sample with number 41 where we totally fail. The same we do for rotation. This was the easy one, but again, the sample 41 was the problem. And finally, the scale. And here we can ask what is the special sample 41. So where this method fails, this sample looks like this pair of images. On the right, you see the visible image, and on the right, you see the near-infrared wavelength. So probably no one of us is able to register these two images precisely. So if you have questions, I try to go through my presentation very quickly. We would like in our future work focus on not just the rotation, shift, and scale, but also to more typical spherical transformation, which I have here presented on the third slide, because the shift on the right is to the different direction than on the bottom. So maybe in the next year, I would like to present our results for different types of transformation in this field. Thank you for your attention, and if you have a question, now is the time.
Okay, thank you. And I have a question. You showed us the results for the image, I think it was the number 41, which had a higher error compared with the other ones, but some images from 26, I think, to 32 maybe, that had a significant higher error. Yes, this slide, perfect. Were there any similarities between these these images in this range?
Thank you for the question. This drawing was contained a lot of lines in comparison to other paintings, because it was a draft for a painting. So therefore, there is really necessary to fit exactly the pixel to pixel. And the difference is that for typical painting, it is okay if you fit area to area. So the convergence here depends how the first steps of the training were successful. If you have very slightly transformed drawing, then you during the training can diverge much more easily than for a painting where are areas of the similarity.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Are there any other questions for Ian? Okay, thank you again. And we can move on to our last speaker, Claudia Pelosi from the University of Tuscia. And the paper is Hypercolorimetric Multispectral Imaging and Pulse Compression Thermography as Innovative Combined Techniques for Painting Investigation, the case of a detached wall painting by Pastura.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. You can share your screen.
My presentation.
Okay, perfect.
And you can see?
Yes, perfectly.
Thank you. My presentation concerns the application of two non-invasive techniques made in collaboration between our university, the University of Perugia, the University of Calabria, and the University of L'Aquila, and the Society Profilo Colore that developed specifically the hypercolorimetric multispectral imaging. These two techniques were applied in this case to detached wall paintings. that is at present under restoration in the laboratories of our university. The aim of our work was to apply the hypercolorimetric multispectral imaging and pulse compression thermography to investigate specifically the preservation state, the crackings, groutings, with the main focus to support the restoration of our conservator and restorers team. The artworks as a conservative history that was investigated at the beginning of the work. This painting represents the Virgin with the Child enthroned between the angels and the Saint Jerome and Francis, and it was created by the artist Antonio del Massaro, known in the central Italy with the name of Pastura, an important artist of the 15th century that probably painted this artwork in 1490. Originally, this painting was located in the church of Santa Maria del Paradiso in Viterbo, and that is a little city in central Italy. And at the beginning of the 20th century, it was detached to move it in the Civic Museum of Viterbo. On that occasion, the painting was for the painting. It was created a new support made of canvas to attach the paintings. The combined use of hypercolorimetric multispectral imaging and pulse compression thermography was tested after the present work on panel paintings, specifically on two Renaissance paintings from Andrea Mantegna and of Michelangelo workshop. This was the occasion to test for the first time the combined use of these two techniques, and the results were very promising, so that to let us to try to test again on different kind of painting, in this case wall paintings. The hypercolorimetric multispectral imaging was developed and by Profilo Colore. It is composed of three parts. The acquisition of images that is made with a modified full-range camera for acquiring the images. The 2 or 4 xenon flashes modified for removing the plastic lenses, and in order to allow the acquisition of ultraviolet reflectance images, and other filter for obtaining also the UV-induced fluorescence images. In order to calibrate the images in the subsequent step, various white pages and a color checker made of 36 color pages by natural color system are used in the acquisition during the acquisition step of the painting. The images are then calibrated by a specific software named SpectraPic, developed by Profilo Colore. And the last step is the image processing through another software, PicViewer, also in this case developed by the Society Profilo Colore. At the end of this process, we have the calibration process. We have 7 radiometric images centered at 7 wavelengths from 350 to 950. And with a third shot, we obtained also the induced fluorescence images. Concerning the pulse compression technique developed and by the colleague from University of Perugia, of Cosenza and L'Aquila, consists of, in this slide, I tried to summarize the main characteristic of the acquisition system, made of a signal generation acquisition part, a camera, infrared camera, that acquired the thermograms, the lighting system that was made of 8 LED chips, and the coded excitation voltage signal that drove the LEDs provided by lambda gen, as indicated in this slide. Here, my colleagues summarized the system, a scheme of the system to use it to obtain the thermograms using this active thermographic system. I will show you some results of this technique, of the combination of these 2 techniques, and clearly this work is still in progress because the restoration itself is still in progress. And with the aid, the collaboration with conservators and restorers, we can clearly derive other information and other results that could be interesting for the conservator, art historians, and restorers. This is the hypercolorimetric multispectral calibrated image at 850 nanometers. In some parts of the image, such as in the garment and also in the feet of Saint Jerome, it's possible to see the preparatory drawing and some pentimenti of the artist. This is the graphical user interface of PicViewer software, in which we can see the application of principal component analysis on a detail, on a part of the image. In this case, specifically, I applied the PCA to the 3 infrared bands in order to try to better highlight some details of the surface of the paintings. And in particular, in this case, the analysis highlights some crackings in the correspondence of the virgin face and neck, partially visible also in the RGB image, but better highlighted in the PCA elaboration. Another another tool that could be applied to the image is the reflectance tool that allows to compare different color and point on the painting. In this case, for example, I compare the color, the brown-red color on the Virgin garment and the similar color in the angel dress. On the right, the software shows the color coordinates of the 2 points, the 2 chosen points, and the reflectance values at the 7 wavelengths that produced after the calibration step. For example, in this case, we can see that the 2 colors have high similarities in terms of reflectance and color. Another tool of this software is the multispectral similarities. In this case, it was applied to map the azurite. This pigment was hypothesized thanks to the false color in the infrared, that is easily derived from the PicViewer software, and this is important because in the painting we can see that the background was probably changed in respect to the original color of the paintings, because in some part, for example, in the background close to the Virgin face, the blue color remained. In other part, it was no more visible over the Morellone setting. The multispectral similarity mapping shows the areas in which this pigment remained on the surface. The results of pulse compression thermography can be shown in terms of emissivity at different times. For example, in this slide, we can see the emissivity at time 1 second and 7 seconds. The first image shows the surface or immediately subsurface layers. The other image at 7 seconds show the more deep layer, the deeper layer. In particular, in this case, we can see this vertical line that corresponds to the canvas used as a new support for the painting after the detachment. Other two interesting areas are this point indicated by the red arrow in the Virgin garment that appear at longer emissivity times in black color, and this is probably a deeper discontinuity or of the paintings. In particular, in this detail of the Virgin, it's possible to see that this detail appear at about 4 seconds. Another part that appear with a dark color and is hotter than the other part of the painting is the arm of Saint Jerome. This is probably characterized by a different material, both in the surface and in the deeper layers. The pulse compression images can also be further processed by Hilbert transformation that could highlight details of the crackings and of the canvas and of the grouting, such as in this part of the paintings, giving so to the restorers a useful map of the conservation status of the paintings and of the ground layers. And at last, we can also apply the principal component analysis on the emissivity images. In this slide, I am showing the first 3 principal components, where we can better highlight the details of the conservation status. For example, in the PCI, in the second principal component, this grouting is well visible in the between the Virgin and Saint Jerome. In the first principal component, we can see other crackings, different crackings, and grouting, surface grouting. And in the third principal components, the canvas joint are better highlighted. In conclusion, we can see that. We can say that the application of hypercolorimetric multispectral imaging and pulse compression thermography on a wall, on the touched wall painting of the 15th century was useful for supporting the conservation and the restoration still in progress of these artworks. And specifically, HMI supplied relevant information about the surface and the subsurface layers, such as possible pigment composition and distribution, preparatory drawing, and pentimenti. Pulse compression thermography was able also to study detachment, grouting, possible gilding on the surface of the paintings, so giving information not only on the surface but also on the deep layers. Clearly, further processing will be possible also with the support of conservators that could address the possible processing of images. And so to give the maximum aid to the conservation, to the restoration intervention. Thank you for your attention. Here our group working group. Thank you.
Thank you for the nice talk. Are there any questions for Claudia Pelosi?
Okay.
There are no questions. Thank you again for your presentation. Our next speaker is Marcello Picollo from the Institute of Applied Physics of the National Research Council. And the paper is documentation and analysis of Sam Picasso's painting by using hyperspectral imaging technique to support their conservation and stylistic matters.
Okay, hi, thank you so much for the presentation and for introducing me. And can you see the
Not
my monitor?
At the moment. No.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, that's not a problem. Try again.
Mm-hmm. Try to share the directly the PowerPoint screen, maybe.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that before it work, I need from you the authorization.
Okay, someone from the technical assistance maybe can work this problem out.
Yeah, they say that this is impossible to share my screen.
È entrato con un browser diverso da Google Chrome?
Yes, it's the same browser that I used this morning.
Ok. Può provare a fare condividi schermo intero. Proviamo. Invece che una finestra.
I try the same.
E allora esca un secondo dalla chat e rientri subito.
Ok.
Grazie.
We'll wait. We'll try this solution. If not, if this doesn't work, we will move on to the next speaker. But let's see if Marcello is able to solve this problem.
Eccoci, riproviamo. Eccoci qua, a posto. Grazie. Il microfono.
So, yes. Marcello, you
Per favore, il microfono.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sorry for all these inconveniences.
No problem.
Okay, so starting with this presentation, still something related with application of imaging techniques to the study of paintings. And this work is part of a project with a Spanish regional project with colleagues from basically from Valencia and Barcelona. So it's related with the study of some chemical and mechanical degradation of contemporary modern paintings, and it was done with the collaboration of the Museo Picasso in Barcelona. So we work on Picasso paintings, and particularly on 4 paintings belonging to the same year, 1917, which are part of the permanent collection of the museum. And so they were used several documentation and analytical methodologies, and the paintings are those 4. They were the images were acquired during the conservation treatment of the painting, so without the frames. So the information are these, and they belongs to the Cubist period of Picasso. And what I'm going to present you is the application of our hyperspectral imaging system. And device was brought to Barcelona, and we scanned the 4 paintings, and so as you can see, the region is we cover the region in the visible and near infrared with 2 different heads. So at the end, we cover the 400, 900 nanometers and 950 and 16 and 50 nanometer ranges. And in this way, we wanted to document the paintings and try to use the images acquired different wavelength for doing a survey on the paintings, and at the same time using the spectral feature that can be extracted from those data for each pixel of the imaging, trying to investigate and try to identify the material used by the artist. First of all, I would like to try to give some inputs about the terminology which could be used in the imaging field for describing different techniques. So basically, we can split them in 3 different main groups, which are could call multiband, imaging, multispectral imaging, hyperspectral imaging, the last 2. So multispectral and hyperspectral imaging can be considered in the bigger family of the imaging spectroscopy. The great advantage of using hyperspectral imaging over the other 2 techniques is that you can have a huge number of bands, usually hundreds of bands, which are acquired, collected in a contiguous way. So it is possible to reconstruct the spectral information of each pixel with a really good quality and good accuracy. And our group started to use imaging spectroscopy techniques from the 1990s. And so we moved from multispectral to hyperspectral. And so it is a couple of our papers, in particular the first papers, which were published in the field. So it's at the end of the 1990s, at the beginning of 2000. The advantage of using these techniques, once we have a good, also be merged together a good spectral accuracy and resolution with an acceptable spatial resolution, that we can use those images, those data for having good images to be used for documentation and of the painting, and being used for as a traditional images like infrared false color and infrared reflectography and other type of images to be used for supporting the documentation and the study of the paintings, but at the same time it's possible to acquire the spectroscopic data so that we can use those data for identification of the materials, and at the same time to create images like PCA images, for instance, and to stress or to highlight some differences which are not visible at naked eye. But for doing this, the importance is to have a very adequate and precise spectral information. Here is the scheme of our system. So we use a push broom spectrometer, which means that we have to scan the system in front of a painting or vice versa. And the way it works is like this. You can see that it has to move with this scanner its Y and X axis. And these are the technical characteristics of our system. So technically, the importance is that we have really a high number of spectral bands for still a good spatial resolution. And those are the information about the size of each pixel on the painting. And those data are fixed for all the acquisitions made with this system. Describing the results that we obtain on Picasso paintings, I'm presenting the results obtained on two paintings. The first one is Woman of the Armchair. You see here the sRGB extracted from the data cube of our system. And those two details, one is RGB, the other one is the image extracted at 1350 nanometers, so in the SWIR. And in this case, they were used for checking the, if there's any presence of pentimenti and the way that the artist made the painting. And so what was seen is very defined, the way the artist create this composition. I mean, at least the face of the lady. And for instance, one small pentimenti is this one around here, which is related with her hairs. And then it was covered by this green portion, which could be resemble a comb. And other, as you can see here, other pentimentis were on the leaves of the fan. But going to the use of the image of the data for trying to identify the materials and map the distribution over the surface of the painting, what we see here is that the green area where all the green areas were made by using a viridian. And the viridian has a very similar spectral features with the chromium oxide pigment, but the difference is due on the shift in the position of the absorption bands. Here are reported the graphs. The black one is the graph extracted, the spectrum extracted from the data acquired on the painting, and the other two are the two references that we acquire from laboratory standards. And also using some algorithms, in this case is the spectral angle mapping algorithm. It was defined, and the end member was this spectrum here, and we saw the distribution of this pigment over the surface of the painting, and what it was seen that all the green areas were more or less homogeneously made using the viridian only. So this was the only green pigment used by the artist. For the other painting, which is a woman in an armchair, on the left, the sRGB image coming from our hyperspectral data. And we found, looking at this weird data, the presence of lead white as a white color pigment, and was the only white pigment used in this painting. And the distribution of the white, lead white, was highlighted with this sun distribution map on your right, and all the white areas corresponded to the presence of lead white. And it was very curious to see that the four white areas, mainly white areas, are corresponding to lead white, but also lead white was very was present in a high amount also in most of the red areas of the painting. While looking at the grayish portion of the painting, so which means that was done, those areas were made with using black pigment mixed with lead white. The black pigment is so absorbing also in the near infrared region that it masks the presence of the lead white absorption band. So it was not possible to see the presence of lead white using this algorithm here in the distribution map of the painting. And the last example is using the sRGB data and the image plus the PCA application on with the SWIR data sets, and here reported the PC2 image, where it was possible to see the artistic technique used by Picasso in the way that he used the brush for painting those areas, the different areas. And with the PC tools, it's possible to see the homogeneity of these paint layers or paint applications over the different set of different areas, sub-areas of the paintings. And as you can see here, and for instance, in this square or rectangle, the red portion was very painted in a very homogeneous way, while the whitish area was very unhomogeneous, not so well. I mean, the brush was not at the end used for providing a uniform and homogeneous surface. Another PC, in this case, is the PC3 image, still with this weird data, shows that some differences in the four weight areas. So some different behavior which could be related with the thickness of the paint layers and the way the artist painted it over the canvas. And another interesting thing is related with this brownish part of the right side of the painting, where this darker part of the brown area totally disappear here, and which could be related with the fact that first the artist made this lighter brownish area on homogeneous on all the right portion of the canvas, and then it was covered by this one for changing the appearance of the composition of the painting. And at the end, what we can see is that these advantages of the technique can be summarized in a few sentences. But once we have a system which can provide both a good spatial and spectral resolution data, it could be used for having a lot of information. First, good documentation, like in this case, we can report it or present as sRGB images, so matching the CIE requirements for color. And then try to identify, it's possible to identify several materials, pigments, and colorants, and then to map the distribution over the entire surface. And then in this way, it can be useful, this technique, to complement and implement the information obtained by other spot spectroscopic analytical techniques. And so what we are saying that hyperspectral imaging is a natural technique for being used in our field, as reported in several papers by other colleagues. And that's it. And I thank you for your attention, and I hope that to be in time. And sorry for the misunderstanding.
No problem. Thank you for the presentation. Any questions for Marcello Picollo? Seems that there are no questions. And thank you again for the nice talk.
You're welcome.
We'll move on to the next speaker, Davide Zappia, from the Research and Technology Innovation Center of RAI, Radio Televisione Italiana, who will present the paper HoloCities, a shared reality application for collaborative tourism.
Morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
So, good morning. I'm Davide Zappia from Research Innovation Center of RAI, I worked on this project with my colleague Roberto Iacoviello, and this presentation is about a mixed reality application for augmented collaborative city tourism. This is HoloCities. The idea of this project began with a concept in mind, this anonymous quote. So every artwork is a document that must be decrypted, and not everyone has the tools to read and understand it. But before starting the technical description of this project, we need to clarify some basic concepts. So let's start by looking at the background first and the state of the art. So in real world, in the world of extended reality, there are many types of realities that radically change the user experience. In the image, you can observe the reality-virtuality continuum. On the far left, we have the daily reality, the physical reality, while to the extreme right, we have the completely virtual reality. But today, we are interested in the realities that are in the middle. On the left, close to the reality, you can see the augmented reality. As the word says, it's an enhancement of the reality. So it overlays virtual object on the real environment, and virtual objects appear fixed in the space. Then in the middle, we have mixed reality that extend augmented reality. So real and virtual objects interact with each other. Virtual assets have awareness of the environment, so they are able to interact with them and with the user. Near on the right, we have augmented virtuality, which is the inverse of augmented reality. So we have a real object within a completely virtual environment. Finally, on the right, we have the virtual reality that replaces the real world with an artificial, and the user can entirely enter in an immersive world. So let's us now analyze the existing technologies for this type of projects. In recent years, there has been a lot of activities around augmented reality, and many important players have introduced in the market many head-mounted displays, HDM. In this slide, you can see the most popular HDMs existing today. Microsoft HoloLens on bottom left. Near we have Unreal Light. On top right, we have the Magic Leap 1, and finally, from presented the last month, Facebook Project Aria. For our project, we used Microsoft HoloLens because it almost fully met our requirements, and that are a good field of view. It's a standalone device, has a good battery life, and the app are developed in Unity engine. This project was carried under the H2020 European projects 5G City and 5G Tours. And this project used mixed reality, visual tracking, and cloud 5G computing to valorize cultural tourism and to make a bridge between the cultural tourism and the RAI archive called Teche. Mixed reality provides an efficient and intuitive way to enhance the user experience in the context of cultural tourism. In literature, there are many examples of augmented reality application for cultural heritage, but many of these are developed for mobile augmented reality, like the first Skull and Bone on the top. So the users can use it only through a smartphone or tablet. And most are created for indoor cultural tours, like Artlands on bottom. From our view, this limitation did not help to enhance the outdoor cultural heritage and did not make full use of existing technologies. So we have targeted to a paradigm shift, a collaborative mixed reality application for tourism in outdoor navigation with the help of cloud computing. As I said at the beginning, this is HoloCities. This was our milestone, as we noticed that the users appreciate virtual tours only the first time, and then they get bored. Well, if users can talk, interact with others, everything becomes much more interesting. So we think that together is better. In our application, we have planned 2 different scenarios with different features. In first scenarios, we have a real guide with a group of tourists. In this case, the guide is the host of the application, while the tourists are the viewer. While on the right, in the second scenario, we only have a group of tourists, so the application recognizes the artwork automatically and provides a virtual guide. As you can see, the hardware architecture is very simple for the first scenario on the left, while it's slightly more complex for the second because there is an automatic visual search for the monument. In the first scenario, the real guide is the host of the AR tour, as I said before, while the tourists are the viewer. Since the guide knows the monument they are looking at, he does not need the automatic visual recognition. So the guide chooses the monument he wants to explain, and the app creates a word anchor that is a point in the real space, which allows you to synchronize assets in the physical world between all the users. Finally, the app shows the virtual content to everyone, and tourists can watch the guide's interaction on the virtual assets while they listen to the explanation. In second scenario, we have only a group of tourists, which are the viewer. In this case, the tourist does not know the monument they are looking at. So the application uses visual search to recognize the monument automatically. Then the app creates the anchor as before and shows the content to tourists and makes the explanation of the found monument. One tourist can interact with the virtual assets and another can see him. In this image, we can see the software architecture related to the second scenario. The application is developed with Unity on the top, takes a photo of the environment every 2 seconds and sends it to the cloud, to the Java Web Service. The Java Web Service is in charge of sending the image received to the visual search on the right, and finally sends back the results of the visual search to the application. For the interaction, we choose a simple interaction model, the gaze as targeting technique, and an hand movement called air tap for the selection, which is the default selection mode for HoloLens. Moreover, we decided to keep the interface as simple as possible in order to make it user-friendly. 8 volunteers test our application, and they had to try user host activities and user guest activities. And here we are with the results. We asked 12 questions, and the score were from 1, disagree, to 5, agree. Subjective evaluations confirmed that the recognition was stable and fast, it was fluent between the contents, and it was easy to use. Moreover, as you can see, the 87% of testers vote 5 and thinks that this application can help and enhance the cultural heritage. So the application was designed to offer an immersive mixed reality experience capable of engaging the user during a city sightseeing. It has been generally appreciated by testers, and it's a way to valorize our RAI tech with the reuse of media content. Main issues that we found were related to the technology limits. The brightness of HoloLens display is not enough in front of the sun sometimes, and a limited field of view of the HoloLens. But in the future, we want to add some features like a remote real guide, which will allow a guide away from the monument to participate in the tour remotely. And a multi-device support to allow tourists who only have a smartphone or tablet to participate as well as the others. Finally, also a real-time multiplayer interaction with the virtual contents. Thanks to everyone. If there are some questions, I'm here.
Thank you, Davide. Are there questions for this presentation? I have only a curiosity. I don't know, maybe you mentioned it, but I may have missed it. How many testers have actually tried the application?
8 testers.
On the same platform, physical platform?
Yes, yes, on the same with the same device, and all the application, all the feature of the application.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Samma Bibi Minelli from Gruppo Meta, and the paper is Cultural Control Room. Cetra addresses and exploits the IoT to innovate cultural heritage promotion.
Hello, I don't know if you see me. I show the screen. Okay.
One moment, we cannot see your screen at the moment. Okay, now yes.
Do you see it?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting us. So what is this presentation about? It is a funded project. It is Regione Campania, and the project name is Cetra. The partners of this group are Meta, where I work for, DataBoots, and University Federico II of Naples. I go directly. I have only 10 slides, so I will be very quick, not to take your attention too much. But it's important that we divide the world into 2 dimensions. One below is the dimension of management of the museums and the ecosystem that has to do with it. And the other upper side is related to the users, who use it, how use it, is it accessible, and whatever. So the problems that are here are in these 2 dimensions, very important, because if we talk about the managers of the museums, they need to manage their data, their assets, to study them. As a lot of the things I've seen today, they also doing research on antique or on artworks on canvas or whatever, and they need to create data. They create digital resources, and they have to catalog them. They have to put in documentation and whatever. So there is huge work behind. And while for the users, what is important is to access, is to have audience development, which is tricky aspect, because it doesn't mean that you are just opening the doors. It's that you are inviting them in. You are trying to keep them interested to what you are doing. So this means also to different ages, personalize the access, different accessibility, disabled users, and so much so forth. So we have addressed these aspects already in the past, because we have experience on creating, this is MetaFAD, one of our platform, open source and used by the Ministry of Culture in Italy. And it is for a cataloging system that it has to do with bibliographic museums or archives or whatever. It is standard setting, and it is one step. So you first do cataloging of your data, and you put them together. And you could do it in an authoritative way, so following the different national standards that are distributed by ICU, ICAR, Istituto Centrale del Catalogo, and degli Archivi. But Cetra goes beyond that, because once you have done the cataloging very well, so this is, most museums have some stuff here, they also acquire devices, and what they need is to put them on, but usually they have to fill these devices one by one. It is a monitor, is it a smart board, is it a table, digital table, is it, we have seen also augmented reality, is it whatever you put there, you need to fill it from there. So our goal with Cetra was to set up an environment, an ecosystem that enables the management to manage, to connect the data you have generated, your collection, to the devices in a single way. and also to monitor the statistics and see some analytics, who is moving from where. We can see, by the way, if a person is staying there all day in one room, and we have seen that, there are persons that arrive there and stay in. We can see, because we collect data from Bluetooth device of your mobile, so it is already active. If it is active, it sends this information, and we can really monitor how people use the space, where they stop, what they do, and what they're interested. We are not going to privacy because we are not getting personal data, apart from the cases that where the users want to show them. But at the moment, is this. But you also can plan, schedule what a device shows for one period to another. So this is really helpful. And the personalization is done through ontological systems. For example, here I've tried to put one difficult aspect. Let's talk about Gabriele D'Annunzio. In Italy, he was a poet, he was a writer, he was a politician, he was an activist, he was an artist. So many areas of the knowledge domain that he has been, it's almost impossible to set a definition about him. And but the users arrive to him in different ways. It could be through movies, it could be through books or whatever. And that's really important to have a system that has a semantic intelligence behind. So the experience is to have a system that enables to narrate different stories in different ways and on different devices that you can control in an easy way. So a storytelling system that might have also embedded some dynamic timelines, ways to do galleries, ways to connect to the territory, because it could be also used outside. You might have it on your mobile application and you could go around your country. In that case, you need a map, because if you're out, you need a map. If you are not, you need a planimetry of the palace sometimes. And what's interesting is that then you want to also to publish your museum books, your catalog, your products, whatever. This has been done by Alinari, for the Alinari Archives by Gruppo Meta, and you can buy books, you can buy bags, you can buy all the showroom products that they produce, the printing or whatever. But you also could search for collections and study collection, get the license to use the images they offer. And so concluding, it is very important to have a unified access system that enables the managers of the museums to make the better way access the users to their content from whatever devices. It could be, you could also connect the reality to or kind of readers, a QR code reader, mapping that could be related to it, or in the station totems or digital signage displays and whatever. So it's very important that everything is connected in a way that for the user is not a difficult activity to access. So you activate the ability. And then the only thing is just to prompt it out, and the user will be interested to access. So concluding, and this is the last slide, is just to say that really we are not just producing one object, a product, an application, but we are trying to put all together. We are trying to put a connection, a chain that brings from the beginning to the end, from the solving first the problems of the museum, to catalog, put on data and whatever, and then to make them able to make it accessible, activate development of the interest of the users, to make them our principal actor in the center, so that you see that if users are not going to a room, there is a problem. If they don't reach the restaurant, it might be interesting how to move them along the museum and make it in a revenue way so that you can activate other engagement and other activities. That's all. I've finished. If you have questions, I'm here for you, or you can contact me through my contact, also info@gruppometa or sam.minelli@gruppometa.it. That's all.
Thank you for your talk. Any questions? Okay, I think that's it. Thank you again for the presentation. And now we have our last speaker, Simone Galli from Politecnico di Milano. Interpretation of archaeological data based on direct and remote retrieval of information.
Okay, good morning. I'm trying to share my screen. Just give me a second. Can you share my screen? Can you see my screen?
Not at the moment, no. Okay, now okay. Yes.
Okay. So, good morning. I'm Simone Galli, and this work deals with the meteorological study of the late Roman archaeological site of Umeldabadib, which is located in a remote position at the outskirts of the Karga Oasis in the Egypt's Western Desert. This work is an outcome of the project LIFE that received funding from the European Research Council. The archaeological site of Umeldabadib is part of a network of fortified settlements installed by the Romans along the empire's southern border, and it is placed along an important crossroad of desert caravan routes. As I was saying, Umeldabadib belongs to a chain of aggressive-looking settlements dating back to the 1st century. And as you can see, they all consist of a central fort surrounded by unfired mud brick buildings. The excellent construction technique and the dry environment allowed an optimal preservation of these remains. In fact, it is still possible to observe ancient irrigation systems and cultivated areas. Due to its isolated position and the difficult environmental conditions, Umeldabadib remained almost unexplored and unsurveyed until 1998, when for the first time Professor Corinna Rossi visited the site and produced a first description of those archaeological remains. So a systematic survey started in 1998 and evolved together with the available techniques that were influenced by the extreme environmental conditions until 2015, when the Western Desert was closed to foreign archaeological missions. So the set of survey data collected in almost 20 years includes handmade sketches based on direct measures and photographs taken in 1998 that represent the basis for an initial geometric survey performed in 2003 by means of a laser distomat and measuring tape. However, in 2014 and 2015, in order to carry out a high-quality digital measurable survey, it was decided to use the technique called photogrammetry. It is a 3D surveying technique that is spreading rapidly in the field of archaeology. This is due to its simplicity and to its low cost. In fact, only digital cameras are required. In particular, for this specific case study, the close-range photogrammetry technique was used. In other words, pictures were taken from the ground. This is due to the fact that it was not possible to make aerial surveys because drones are not allowed in Egypt. Moreover, instruments such as laser scanners were not used due to the challenging environmental conditions. In fact, the sand would have damaged their rotating components. So the ground-based photogrammetric data were collected and stored until 2016, when they were processed for the first time using the software Agisoft Photoscan. However, due to the large amount of data, it was decided to divide the site into different zones, into different areas, and process the data of each of them separately. The photogrammetric data processing includes several steps. It starts with the automatic alignment of the images. In this phase, some specific points called tie points are identified in each picture, and they are used in order to create a first sparse point cloud. By means of specific georeferenced markers, this point cloud is scaled and it is used in order to create a dense point cloud. Then the points of this dense point cloud can be connected by means of a mesh that can be also colorized by means of a texture. Recently, Agisoft Photoscan has evolved into Agisoft Metashape. This new software is more robust. For this reason, the previous point cloud was updated, and all the 5,038 pictures of the site have been aligned at the same time, so without dividing them in different areas. In this way, it was possible to obtain a single sparse point cloud, increasing the overall accuracy of the final model. So, based on this unique sparse point cloud, it was possible to create a dense point cloud, which has been divided into 9 parts in order to make more manageable operations such as cleaning, removing noise, and processing of the point cloud in CAD drawing software. In fact, the point cloud has been imported in AutoCAD. In this way, it was possible to draw the site map directly on the dense point cloud, and to report the metrical reference of the vertical plane on the horizontal representation. In fact, different layers and different colors have been used in function of the elevation. The main objective of this work was to obtain new metric information of the archaeological remains. Obviously, the 3D model played a key role in order to extract this kind of information and to reconstruct the geometrical structure of the settlement. However, it was possible to achieve this result only combining digital data with the handmade sketches, the pictures taken in 1998, and the survey performed by Lazar Distumat in 2003. Particularly, the objective of this study was achieved by means of 4 different targets: the integration and the improvement of the overall map of the fortified settlement. In fact, the previous site maps geometrical errors have been adjusted by means of the 3D digital model. On the contrary, the original handmade sketch included information that were difficult to identify on the digital point model. The second target was to update the map with the addition of elements that were invisible in 2003 and elements that have disappeared since then. For example, the original sketch map contains the only existing metrical information about some destroyed buildings. The third target consisted in the highlighting of evidence useful to reconstruct the original layout and the shape of the architectural elements that compose the settlements. The last target was to provide a reliable basis for an overall metrological survey. For example, dimensional patterns and gridded layouts have been defined. The Christian church east of the fort was chosen as a case study. In fact, this building presented 3 different discrepancies between the handmade maps and the 3D survey. First of all, as you can see from this picture, in the 2003 map, the east-west axis of the church is shifted slightly to the north, thus producing lateral naves of different dimension. However, the 2014 3D survey confirms the alignment suggested by the very first published sketch of the church. The second discrepancy is related to the north wall of the church that was not orthogonal to the perimeter wall of the settlement in the digital map. This condition is completely different from those of the previous maps. That specific portion of the building was not completely visible in 1998 and 2003, and was heavily damaged in 2004. However, one specific picture taken in 2014 provided an important clue. You can see here a part of about 60 centimeters of plaster on the perimeter wall of the settlement. The plaster shows exactly the same decorative pattern that was found and recorded on the now destroyed northern wall of the church, thus suggesting that this surface belonged to the same space. So this appears to confirm that the wall that outlined the church along the northern side was not orthogonal to the perimeter wall. The third analyzed discrepancy was the transversal wall that appears to separate the church from the room located immediately to the west. In particular, the stump of an arch springs orthogonally from the southern wall of the church. The 2003 map suggested the presence of a continuous wall with just a passage across its southern portion. However, once again, the 3D model presented a new clue. In fact, it is possible to observe a rectangular cavity in the northern wall, which might correspond to the point from which symmetrical arch sprang. So, as you can see, starting from this hypothesis, a geometric reconstruction of the 3 access arches corresponding to the 3 naves of the church was attempted. So the plan of the church presented here, that substitutes the ones published in the past, is therefore based on a successful combination of sources of different types and origins. This approach, based on merging the information coming from the 3D survey with all the other available sources, will be used to update the general map of the whole fortified settlement. In this way, the final result will allow archaeologists to reconstruct the layout of the settlement, and it will provide important information in order to carry out a meteorological study of both the settlement as a whole and of the individual buildings. So this is what we are going to do. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions for Simone? Okay, I think there are no questions. So once again, I'll thank you for your talk. And since this was the last talk, we can wrap up our session. Thanks to all the speakers who have contributed to the session. If there are questions, of course, we have a couple of minutes that we can spend. If not, if there are questions, you can write to the Secretariat of the conference. Thank you again, and have a nice day.